All people with power, everyone who holds power over other people, understand the same truth. If you can shape how people think, you can control how they act. Beijing and Washington both know this. And there is probably no better place to watch this in real time than Taiwan. Here, every headline, every viral post, every televised statement isn't just information. It's ammunition in a war that's been going on for decades. But the first shots aren't fired from guns. They are fired from screens. Long before any invasion, a different war is already underway. A war for perception, identity and truth. Because if you can control how a population acts, you might take power without having to fire even a single shot. I'm Alexander Hensby and welcome to The Libertarian Realist. The Chinese Communist Party has spent decades studying how to win wars by avoiding them. Its modern doctrine emphasizes the three warfares: psychological, media, and legal warfare, a non-kinetic strategy adopted by the PLA in 2003. These are tools not meant to destroy an enemy's body, but to weaken their belief in resisting. The goal here is relatively simple: make resistance seem hopeless, make reunification with China seem inevitable. When Chinese jets cross the median line, that invisible boundary between Taiwan and the mainland, it is not just a show of force, it's mental conditioning. The first time, people watch in fear. The 10th time, they sigh. The 100th time, well, they barely notice. Intimidation becomes routine, the extraordinary becomes ordinary. And the message behind each flight is the same: we can strike whenever we want, and no one can stop us. But the brilliance of this campaign lies in subtlety. The CCP doesn't necessarily need Taiwan to believe that war is coming, only that fighting back isn't worth it. So it promotes doubt. Doubt in the United States, doubt in democracy, doubt in Taiwan's ability to survive independently. Thousands of fake social media accounts whisper the same lines. The US won't come. The West is tired. Reunification is inevitable. Repeat a lie long enough and it starts to feel like realism. This isn't old school propaganda. It's cognitive warfare aimed at reshaping people's sense of truth itself. Because if truth becomes uncertain, if nobody knows what is right or wrong, or even worse perhaps, if nobody knows if there is actually such a thing as right or wrong, conviction becomes impossible. And a population without conviction cannot resist. Flood the internet with enough disinformation and eventually truth becomes irrelevant. The battlefield of any war is not only measured in bullets or missiles, it's measured in belief, in willpower. Whoever occupies the mind of the Taiwanese people will determine the fate of the island. The CCP understands a timeless principle. The greatest victory, the best victory, is the one achieved without having to fight. For Beijing, Taiwan is not just a military problem. It's a long-term psychological operation. The most important question isn't how to invade Taiwan, but how to make Taiwan surrender without a struggle. China's strategy works through repetition and emotional exhaustion. Military exercises, missile tests, naval encirclements, these are of course not in any way random. They are signals. Look how small you are. We're already inside your airspace and your media, basically trying to signal we've already won. Beijing calls these routine operations. And of course, the routine is the point. The second front is narrative warfare. One family, one nation, a shared history, peaceful reunification. These appear across state media, academic forums, influencer videos, and cultural events, framing resistance as futile. The subtle undertone remains constant. Taiwan's democracy is temporary, China's unity is destiny. Now, China's digital influence is global. English language influencers funded by state media push polished narratives like the West is declining, Taiwan is just a pawn, the US provokes every conflict. Now granted, there is some truth to each of these, which is one of the key components to successful propaganda, of course. But it is the way that these narratives are pushed, systematically, over and over again, for decades, which is designed to weaken Taiwanese willpower over time. But Beijing's most effective psychological weapon may be economic. Now, China is Taiwan's largest trading partner, absorbing nearly 30% of its exports. When Taiwan elects pro-independence leaders, China doesn't just threaten, it bans pineapples, sugar apples, seafood. So to Taiwanese farmers, the message is clear: your livelihood depends on us. Each ban teaches a lesson. Stability comes through compliance. Then comes legal warfare, that is shaping international perception. Every time a global company lists Taiwan as a region of China, Beijing slowly rewrites reality. Fear, narrative, economy, legality all converge on one goal: erode the Taiwanese will to resist. A nation's so-called strength depends not only on its weapons, but on its people's belief in their independence. Beijing's long game is to hollow out that belief until surrender seems like common sense. Now, while China uses certainty, America to a very large extent uses uncertainty. Washington's policy of strategic ambiguity forces Beijing to plan for the possibility, however small, of US intervention. And that sliver of doubt is a psychological weapon. High-profile visits, arms sales, and statements about defending democracy reinforce this ambiguity. To Beijing, they're saying, we might be there. To Taipei, they're saying, you are not alone. But these signals cut both ways. They deter China, yet risk making Taiwan dependent on American promises. Beijing exploits that tension, portraying the US as unreliable and self-interested. So Taiwan becomes the stage for a psychological proxy war. So China broadcasts certainty, resistance is pointless, all of that, and America broadcasts uncertainty. Invasion may trigger catastrophe, but China never really knows how much it makes sense to mobilize or escalate, and maybe there doesn't need to be war, maybe war is inevitable, but it could be pushed for another generation, etc., etc. And caught between these two narratives are the Taiwanese people, trying to guess which of these stories will define their future. Now, the most important front is inside Taiwan itself, because the target of psychological warfare is not territory. It is identity, it is willpower. Taiwan has long lived with a dual consciousness, the legacy of the Republic of China and the reality of a modern democratic Taiwan. Beijing exploits this dissonance. Every one China narrative chips away at a sense of separate identity, and yet the pressure has also forged a stronger Taiwanese identity. Today, more than 70% of the population identify as Taiwanese only. But as we might expect, constant pressure comes with a cost. As already mentioned, threats become background noise, a psychological phenomenon known as threat habituation. Over time, it reduces anxiety and vigilance. And that's exactly what Beijing wants: a society too numb to resist. Taiwan, however, has to some degree learned to fight back with resilience. The government now runs programs on spotting disinformation and staying calm under crisis. Now, if you've watched my videos, you know that I am, to put it mildly, pretty skeptic about how much any state or government really can and wishes to teach its population to fight disinformation. If people really started to fight disinformation, it would lead to them dismantling the state. But that's at least what the Taiwanese government claims to be doing. At the same time, non-profits teach cognitive defense, artists weaponize humor, turning fear into unity, and many analysts agree a full-scale invasion would be extremely risky and costly for China. The thing is, Taiwan's survival ultimately depends not on Beijing's choices, but on whether the Taiwanese people continue to believe in their own freedom. Because the first and last barrier an enemy must break is a state of mind. And at least for now, Taiwan's mind remains relatively unbroken. This isn't a single campaign, it's a generational struggle. China aims for slow erosion. Each year of doubt, each day of exhaustion is a quiet victory. Its leaders think in decades, not election cycles. But the strength of the Taiwanese people is also generational. New generations grow up more skeptical of authoritarianism and more aware of manipulation. Though, as we see in many Western nations, that development is nowhere guaranteed. The battle for Taiwan is also a clash between two philosophies. One rooted in authoritarian patience and one rooted in individualism and freedom. Now, the war, of course, doesn't stop at Taiwan's shores. The same disinformation networks target Tokyo, Washington, and even you. Narratives of US decline, China's inevitability, and resistance is futile spread globally. In the end, perception is the weapon used here, and the world is the battlefield. Taiwan's future will be shaped not just by soldiers or diplomats, but by a shadow war over conviction, over whether a relatively free people can maintain their sense of truth. And as the world watches this island stand between two psychological giants, you as an individual must ask yourself, once the war for your mind begins, will you even notice? Which is an interesting question because it already has, making the real question, have you noticed? And if you have, what can you do about it? And what are you doing about it? Thank you for listening.